Our next guest speaker I met for the first time today, and he's our warrior fighting, what's the knight's name? Man with all the gillionaire money?
Wes Stevens?
From Virgin.
Richard Branson.
Sir Richard Branson.
He's not even involved. That's a
But
fact.
he's not putting up any money, am I right,
No,
Don?
he's like you.
Just his name. I got more money. Don Ferraro is the CEO of Analytics, RAM Analytics. Probably knows more about Virgin Atlantic. That used to be All Aboard Florida. And then what was the second name, Don? All Aboard Florida when it started. Then it's
All over Florida, then Brightline, now Virgin Trains.
now Virgin Train, and when they go bankrupt, it'll be another name because they will get.
Tri-Rail.
So let me introduce Don Ferraro, and any questions you might have, we're going to have questions and answers afterwards. Come on down, Don.
Thank you very much.
Right on.
Hey, Mel. That's the real name, Brightline. All right. So, hey, just so you guys know, there was a question about rhinos, and I want to tell you that I've met with Christian 3 or 4 times, and I've been in the political consulting business for quite some time. And what we usually typically look for is somebody with a good education, good professional background, and somebody who's principled. And I will tell you, from my impression of Christian, that is exactly the case. All right, I can get those guys elected all day long. It's not a problem to do that. And he is certainly electable. But here's one of the big things that you guys got to understand. I know that the field is crowded.
Yes.
You got to find one, and you got to support it. And I think Christian's a good guy to support. I think Christian is a good guy to support. So, bear with me 1 second. Imagine that. Microsoft wants to restart my computer. All right. So, I've got a question for all of you guys. This is multiple choice. Mel, where'd Mel go? He took off already.
He's in there getting food.
Oh, imagine it. So he asked for multiple choice questions. What type of company is Brightline Trains?
Commuter.
A, passenger rail, commuter railroad, real estate development company, freight railroad, oil and gas, or F, all above?
All of the above.
What's that? All of the above. That's exactly right. All right. We've got Fortress Investments, who purchased Florida East Coast Industries. All right. And they own all those types of companies, and it is an integrated strategy. So, when I've watched Brightline presentations in the past, I always want to stand up and say, hey, that's not true, all right? So we have what I call a bullshit policy. If I tell you something that you think is bullshit, feel free to stand up and talk to me about it. And then if I don't have an answer for you, we'll get references or I'll dive into it. But nevertheless, I want you to know that these are all the documents that I'll send out to Mel, and then he can send it out to you guys for you guys to do the background with regards to what I'm talking about. So, what I want to talk to you guys about, I want to talk to you a bit about my background, the history of this project, transit-oriented development, liquefied natural gas, the spaghetti bowl that is Fortress Energy, the Department of Transportation application for LNG rail transport, which is going to occur right here on alternate A1A and Dixie Highway, just so you guys know. We're going to look at that. In fact, Mary, are you good at reading out loud? Because
Yeah.
I stink at it.
Okay.
I'm going to need your help.
All right.
All right. Then we're going to talk about Brightline safety and government and the government subsidy, and then questions and answers. So, Now, my background, just to give you guys a little bit of a background on me. Went to school at the United States Naval Academy, graduated, then worked, consulted with the NSA, worked with Merrill Lynch, with Business Financial Consulting Group. We had taken Boston Chicken public at that point in time. Then I went out on my own. I was consulting individually, ended up being a COO, CFO for a company down in North Lauderdale. That company sold in 2008. Purchased a couple of publishing companies. As you guys know, print media has gotten really, really tough. And over the last 7 or 8 years or so, been involved in the political consulting world with candidates like Christian and also advocacies like Florida Alliance for Safe Trains. So 6 months ago, I connected with Florida Alliance for Safe Trains, and in order for me to get up to speed, I had to do a lot of research. I mean, there's a lot of different pieces to this. So as I'm looking through it, I'm like, oh geez, it's not Hyperloop, which is Elon Musk, right? I mean, that's the latest and greatest train technology. They're going to use old tracks. It's 4 times expensive as their competitor. Geez, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Why would it be 4 times more expensive? Wall Street essentially rejected the IPO, right? None of you guys wanted to invest in it. Did anybody invest in it? Was anybody interested in investing in it? How come? Melly, did you invest?
Yeah, we did. We gave a penny.
You gave a penny? They're burning a ton of cash. They have deadly. Their marketing and their corporation is deceptive. They're disruptive to communities. There's a minority of politicians and people that are supporting Brightline. Typically, the people that are supporting Brightline right now from the right side typically tend to be in the real estate world. And I understand that, but that's who's supporting Brightline. And I understand where they're coming from. But as I'm diving into this and I'm diving into the financials, geez, it doesn't make any sense. I'm like, oh my God, what's going on here? So I know Wes Edens, the chairman of Brightline and the founder of Fortress Investments. He's a smart guy. Why would he want to start a passenger rail company? So in my research, I had stumbled across conversations regarding liquefied natural gas and transit-oriented development. Has anybody heard about transit-oriented development?
Is it all related real estate development around the stations? Is that what it is?
Yeah, exactly. Mel, have you heard anything about it?
Yes.
No, not at all?
Tell me.
You're supposed to help me, Mel. Come on now.
No, it's Agenda 21.
Agenda 21, 750, Andre Stuani, right?
Yeah.
So 750, the vision there was combine 7 counties from Miami to Orlando, okay, in 50 years, make it a regional power in the world. It was all circled around new urbanism, all right, and again, transit-oriented development. So when they talk about transit-oriented development, they like to show you skylines like this. This is the waterfront to Miami, right? Absolutely gorgeous. I guess that some of you guys, I know Mel is from New York, okay? When I think about transit-oriented development, I think about the trips I used to take to Maine when I was a kid, right? We had a house in Maine. I lived in central New Jersey. We used to go to the George Washington Bridge on 95. And so we'd go over to George Washington Bridge and we'd be going up 95, and there'd be projects in Harlem.
Yep. Projects.
That's what I think about when I think about transit-oriented development. Now, I'll tell you, there's a fortune for developers, okay? It's transactional versus necessarily sustainable, right? So let's use City Place as an example. $850 million development, right?
Right down the street from it.
And what's going on with it now?
It's a construction pit.
Construction pit, right? So it's 10 years later, 15 years later, right? Nobody ever did the economic feasibility as to whether or not it made sense. Did we need another set of restaurants? Do we need retail shops, things like that?
They just blew up the whole fountain area.
Exactly. I was there 2 weeks ago on a Monday night. Now, I'm a pretty big guy. I was afraid to walk through the streets. Nobody's there, very, very quiet, right? Again, so now they went bankrupt, all right? The developers, they took their 10% out. They took 85 million bucks, they stuck it in their pocket. I don't know what they took, but ended up being bankrupt. City Place is no longer around. It is now Rosemary Square. So that's what transit-oriented development is, and those are the people right now that are really spewing forth that Brightline is going to make a huge economic difference. Now, let's talk about liquefied natural gas. Where'd Christian go? He took off? My engineer took off? All right. So liquefied natural gas is a byproduct of oil drilling. Oh, he's hiding in there. That's okay. So it's a byproduct of oil drilling. It actually sits. There's a cap rock. They drill down, and natural gas sits on top of the oil, right? And what they do is they extract that, typically through fracking. I won't get into that process. Then the atmosphere, they lower the temperature to negative 260 degrees Fahrenheit, and it becomes a liquid form. Very, very volatile, okay? Very, very volatile product. And right now, for the state of Florida, it's the Marcellus Shale, which is in northeast Pennsylvania, Mary, right?
Right.
From where the coal region was, that's where liquefied natural gas is coming. There's a pipeline that goes down through Tennessee into Alabama, and then it comes into here in South Florida, okay? Through the Sable Trail pipeline, all right, and it comes into Central Florida. So that's liquefied natural gas, and it's important for you to understand that, so that it's just a precursor to moving forward. So let's talk about the spaghetti bowl, which I call Fortress Investments. Fortress Investments is a private equity firm. They buy and sell a lot of companies. Back in 2007, they purchased Florida East Coast Industries. Basically, 2007, okay, Florida East Coast Industries has a real estate company, and they've got Florida East Coast Rail, all right? Those are the two major components. You've got Florida East Coast Rail, which their freight traffic is off by about 50% because citrus is pretty much dead here in the state of Florida, okay? And then 2007, what was the big issue in 2007? Real estate, okay? So Florida East Coast Industries, Flagler, okay, they own something like 30 million, something along the lines of like 30 million square feet in the state of Florida. So all that property is depressed, all right? So it's essentially a buyout. So anyway, we've got Flagler, we got Florida East Coast Rail, we've got, they created Brightline in 2012, then they created New Fortress Energy, which relates to LNG, and ultimately, just to give you a quick idea, the way this thing will probably end up, this is a strategy I've heard, but just from my research, you'll have Flagler, the real estate company, combined with New Fortress Energy, okay, which is LNG shipments, and you'll have Brightline end up combining with Tri-Rail, because Brightline is not sustainable. And they won't tell you that, but we're going to get into it. So there's all these companies, all right. This right here was the authorization to export liquefied natural gas. And I just want to go over this map with you real quick, okay? So this is American LNG. American LNG is owned by Fortress Investments, right here, controlled by Fortress Equity Partners. So let's just go over this map real quick. Up here in Jacksonville is FEC Rail's headquarters, all right? Here in Titusville, okay, is a liquefaction plant for LNG, which Fortress Investments owns. Down here in Hialeah, okay, is another plant that is owned by Fortress Investments for liquefaction. What connects them all?
The choo-choo.
The railroad. Okay. Now, their problem right now is they've got a contract on the island of Jamaica, okay, to supply liquefied natural gas for all their power plants. The Caribbean, Latin America, there's a ton of need, okay? There's a huge market for liquefied natural gas to fuel power plants. They don't have enough port capacity in order to get that out. So what they want to do right now what they want to do is they want the Port of Miami, Port Everglades, Port of Palm Beach, Port Canaveral, Port of Jacksonville, and Tampa in order to export to again, they've got a bottleneck as far as distribution. They want to be able to export liquefied natural gas to the Caribbean, to Africa, and to Western Europe. So now, there's another company here, Tico Development Partners, and you can see that is Titusville right there. All right, and look at this address right here, 2855 Lejeune Road, Coral Gables. So when you ask a question to Brightline executives, okay, Patrick Goddard or Rusty Roberts, they'll say, well, we know nothing about liquefied natural gas going on the tracks right here through all of our towns. That's not our business. 2855 Lejeune Road, right? That is Fortress Development Group, Tico. That's their address. And again, as I said, again, these are all export contracts. Port of Miami, Port Everglades, Port Canaveral, Port of Palm Beach, Port of Jacksonville. So they want to be able to export out of there. So, again, we got a spaghetti bowl, we got a bunch of companies, we got New Fortress Energy, we got American LNG, we got Tico Development, what's their address? 2855, and all aboard Florida, Frightline. Virgin Trains, what's their address?
Same thing.
Same thing. The building's not that big,
Why do you call it spaghetti bowl?
because it's so confusing.
Oh, okay.
And that's by design, right? I mean, usually you've got this line of companies. It's so confusing, but when you start to dig in, you see. So we got Tico Development Partners. We got all aboard Florida. As I said, same address, right? 2855 Lejeune Road. Who set it up? Colleen Cobb. Okay, she's an attorney. Who's she an attorney for? This is Colleen Cobb. Legal affairs for Florida East Coast Industries. Wait. Are you guys connecting this whole thing?
Right.
Right?
It's like
Spaghetti, right? It's very confusing. But you know what? This is the building right here. This is their headquarters. It's not that big. You think that all aboard Florida doesn't know who Tico Development Partners are? Who's running the Titusville plant? They're in the same building. And it's not that big. What's that, 4 stories? I'm not that smart. Mel, how many? Mel, where are you going?
I'm not going anywhere. This building is away.
Would you know everybody in that building?
I know.
You probably do. I know you do. Now, all right, Mary,
Oh, what?
I need your help. This is the DOT application to transport LNG. Can you read this out loud for me?
The letter is in response to Florida East Coast Railways FEC request under Title 49 Code of Federal Regulations, CFR Section 174.63 for the Federal Railroad Administration, FRA. They have all these initials. It's like the government.
Yeah.
Approval to transport liquefied natural gas, methane refrigerated liquid.
Right here.
Okay, by
By rail.
rail.
Okay.
It
So,
is- okay.
FEC is requested to transport liquefied natural gas by rail, right?
Now, who did you say Florida East Coast Railway was?
It's part of Fortress Investments. They actually sold it off, but nevertheless, those are those tracks right there on A1A and Dixie Highway. All right, these are the tracks that Brightline is currently running on from Miami to West Palm. They're going to eventually go to Cocoa, and they're already cutting through 528 into Orlando. All right, these are the tracks that have been here since 1898 when Henry Flagler established the line. Okay, so.
Isn't this explosive?
Yes. Oh, yes.
That's it.
Yeah, very expensive.
Right, it is. Right.
I'd like to clear something up.
Yes.
You said there's, when I was in Lantana, and we had the FEC, I wanted to put a second set of tracks in.
Yeah.
But do I hear hear you saying they're using the same old tracks. These were brand new.
They are, okay, so it's the same rail line, okay, that goes through downtown Lantana, Hypoluxo, Lake Worth, okay, West Palm. They added a second set. Why? Because freight takes priority over passenger rail. They need the capacity to go from Titusville down to Hialeah in order to get to the Port of Miami, Port of Everglades, Port of Palm Beach.
That wasn't my question. My question was, I thought I heard you say they were using the same old railroad tracks.
They are.
And I'm saying I watched them put in new tracks.
Correct. You are right. So what they did was they replaced the old tracks. The Department of Transit, okay, allowed Brightline to go out and borrow $1.75 billion to upgrade those tracks for FEC.
I didn't see them doing anything on the FEC tracks. They didn't do anything. The FEC tracks have always been there.
On Dixie?
Yeah, just west of Dixie, yes. Just west of US 1. The old FEC tracks are always there. I watched them.
All right.
And I watched them build the ones, just west of that.
So that may have been Tri-Rail. I'm not that familiar with, all right? So, now, proposed transportation of LNG by rail is a new opportunity for railroads. This is the Department of Transportation's response back. And it's a challenge for safety regulators. LNG is a very hazardous material with temperatures of negative 260 degrees Fahrenheit. We know any release of LNG in a non-controlled environment is very dangerous, but the transportation of large quantities of LNG in a single train presents unique safety risks. Okay, this is the Department of Transit responding back to that. Now, both the unique challenges posed by the rail transportation of LNG require us to ensure that we are doing everything we can to keep railroad employees and communities along the proposed route safe. FEC's proposed LNG transportation routes traverse congested, highly populated, and frequent highway rail grade crossings. Any LNG transported along the proposed route would eventually share the routes with high-performance passenger trains operating at speeds of 110 miles per hour. Does that sound?
No.
What's that?
Makes no sense.
It sounds unsafe, but anyway.
Okay.
Keep going.
So the complexity of this operating environment requires the FRA to conduct further evaluation. The last thing is that the only place that this is being done right now is in Alaska, through the forests. That's the only place that it's authorized. And again, they're only doing 40 miles per hour. They've got a lot less crossings, and the trains are going to be traveling 110 miles an
All right,
hour.
I think I'm confused, and I'm probably the only one.
No, go ahead.
All right, so I'm getting confused because are they using Brightline as a front for the LNC transport? So
Okay.
why would they want to develop when they know they want to propose this highly combustible, dangerous? I'm not following.
All right.
What their scale? What's
So,
their scale?
so you said, are they using it as a front?
As a front. Because they're losing money.
They are losing money, okay? To go and raise $1.75 billion to support FEC to get into the liquefied natural gas business would be very, very difficult. All right. So what they've used is a passenger rail company. All right. And we've got the Department of Transit that everybody loves commuter rail, right? Left on the right side, we've got real estate developers that love it. Everybody's in favor, right? So they give the money to Brightline, but Brightline upgrades the tracks.
And then what happens to Brightline?
In my opinion, in 5 years, in 5 years they go bankrupt. We're going to talk about finance. And go ahead.
And then, because of Brightline, maybe real estate starts developing, so I see, well, doesn't that make it more difficult for the LNG
So on the LNG, once they get authorization, it's done. They can then transport LNG from Titusville down to Miami and into all the different ports.
Do they have their authorization?
So they know they're gonna make money back.
It's still under review, and I think August 7th might be
So we want to stop.
well, so that's a complex issue because it is regulatory, right? So you can speak with Ryan Nash, you can speak to our legislators, and they can voice their opinions, but the Department of Transit and the Department of Energy are the ones that are going to decide that, and they are not elected officials. So it's completely against Palm Beach Tea Party values.
Is this the state of Florida we're talking, or we're talking?
Right.
It's federal right now, okay? But the state of Florida Department of Transit refuses to get involved with this.
What role does the governor play?
We have reached out to the governor many times, okay? And again, this is the proverbial third rail, no pun intended, because there are people that are for it. There are people on the right that are for it. There are people on the right that are really against it, right? The same thing on the left.
Sounds like a lot of money. There's a lot of money at stake.
There is a lot of money at stake. So, any other questions regarding that? Yes?
Is there any way that we can do anything to stop this to be outright?
All right, so the first thing that Florida Alliance for Safe Trains, which is my client, what they would tell you to do is call and email Ron DeSantis, all right? Call and email your congressman, spread the word, all right? Because this is happening. I mean, we just read it, right? I mean, I didn't make this stuff up, and I've got all the documents, again, you guys can look at the documents. So it's going to happen. So, yes, you can do that. The other thing that we've talked about is working with local officials, get them to pass laws to make it illegal to transport LNG, make it illegal to travel through the area at 110 miles an hour. Pass those laws. Now, go ahead.
I don't know 470 miles an hour in Jupiter.
It's crazy, right?
Not gonna do it. Block cars are already tipped over by Ricker.
Yeah.
Already tipped over.
Yeah, well, and that's the whole thing. That's why they had to upgrade the tracks. So
They're not upgrading.
Huh?
They're not upgrading.
What are you talking about? The CSX tracks? Or are you talking about
The freight line you got going up.
up Dixie?
Yeah.
All right. So their game plan right now is to go between 79 and 110 miles an hour. Right now, between Miami and West Palm Beach, they're doing 79 miles an hour.
With the gas?
Huh?
With the gas? The pass.
That's a passion fruit. Correct. Yes.
Well, from my understanding, okay, Brightline did not pay for the crossings. Brightline actually forced each municipality to spend millions of dollars upgrading their crossings. And the reason was because Flagler et al., whatever company they are now, owned the property on both sides. And what basically they said was, if you don't upgrade your crossings, we will shut it down. And they got us over the barrel. Now, from what I understand, nowhere in legal history, two private companies can come and make a contract in perpetuity. But this contract is in perpetuity. Why? Because probably the federal government doesn't want to maintain the tracks. So right now, you talk about everybody being responsible, but right now the cities are picking up the tab for those intersections.
Yes. So just to delineate, the upgrading of the crossing equipment, Brightline has paid for, all right? And they're burning through cash like nobody's business. When it comes to the ongoing maintenance of those crossings, okay? The cities and counties are responsible. So in the case of Indian River County, they expect the cost to go up 4 times.
When Lantana refused to upgrade, they put on their horns so loud that the residents were crying uncle. They actually forced Lantana to pick up the bill, and for months, when Brightline came through, you could hear it miles and miles away. So, no, they're not paying for all the equipment. Maybe be paying for the maintenance, but they are blackmailing the cities.
They are. Now, let me ask you something. What benefit does Lantana get from Brightline trains?
Absolutely not.
So what was our nation founded on? The Tea Party. What was the cry? No taxation without representation, right? And that's what's going on, and they don't care. The private company doesn't care.
No, because the federal government doesn't want to maintain the tracks.
What, and listen, that certainly could be part of this. There could be a need for an upgrade on the tracks, like I'm talking about liquefied natural gas, because that is part of Fortress investments. All right. However, it could be military shipments. It could be it could be something related to the space program. I don't know that answer. All right. But nevertheless, yes, we are paying for it. Any other questions? Yes.
What about all the bridges they're talking about that need to be upgraded in between these tracks and
Yeah.
between these counties? All the bridges are the tracks have to go over bridges.
Correct. Yeah. So it's my understanding that Brightline is responsible to pay for those bridges. What I'd like to see, for those of you who are from New York and New Jersey, we're going to talk about Brightline's safety record here, all right? But in New York and New Jersey, they don't have a whole lot of accidents with cars or with pedestrians, right? They've got elevated tracks. That's exactly right. When you have it, as you move, I grew up in New Jersey, so as you move away from New York City, right? Everything is elevated close to the city, and then as you get down into like Monmouth County, now all of a sudden they become at grade. All right, they don't have the accidents. And perfect segue. New Jersey Transit had less accidents last year than Brightline trains. All right, and they traveled 20 times further. 500,000 miles versus 10 million. Why? Because they practice, it's best practices. That's what they're doing. So let's talk about Brightline safety record. There are two, between Brightline and FEC, down here in Palm Beach County, or down here in South Florida, 2 accidents per month. One every 2 weeks, all right? They hit either a car or a pedestrian. There's been 57 accidents in 18 months. They're ranked last in the United States, right? So if we just look at number of accidents, that's not a great number. Like I said, New Jersey Transit here, they only had 22 versus 24. But then what we need to look at is number of accidents per 100,000 miles traveled. And when you look at that, we call it the death ratio. Notice Brightline is 4.7, okay? 4.7 accidents per 100,000 miles traveled.
They've been hitting cars and people dying
Oh, absolutely.
on these tracks.
Yes, 23.
You don't watch the news.
Yeah. Oh, and yes, now, you know why you don't know?
Goes down, in the crossings, the cars go down.
It's mostly
the cars go
pedestrian.
around. I mean,
There are
where
some
I live, there are
cars, mostly
plenty of signs that say no trespassing. They cross the tracks all the time. Who calls them that?
But you
All
know,
right, so we're going to talk about that a little bit, right? Oh, but by the way, ma'am, what's your name? Robin? The reason why you haven't heard about this, they never memorialize an accident. They never memorialize a death.
I thought
They-
I don't read the local papers because it's what's saying.
I get it, but it's never memorialized. And a lot of times they don't even tell you the name. They just say it was a pedestrian trespassing. So,
can I ask something?
Yes.
That just seems weird to me. I mean, aren't the pedestrians have some responsibility and not be running across tracks when the train's coming?
absolutely.
So why are you blaming the train for that?
Because we can deploy best practices. So I'm going to tell you why. So let me ask you something. Here's what Brightline Train says.
In pedestrian areas. They should be slowing down. They shouldn't be coming through at 100 miles an hour.
That's important, but
Absent the train, there's no risk.
yes. All right. So here's what Brightline says. Yes, we've had a lot of accidents, but the reason why is because of mental illness, which is suicides, right? and the opioid addiction. So I'm like, well, why is South Florida, is it any worse than Philadelphia? Is it any worse than New York City?
I don't know. I think they're showing it maybe.
Well, let me show you something. You guys just see Brightline train. Central Florida Rail is the second worst. South Florida Regional Transit, which is Tri-Rail, is the third worst.
Doesn't say a lot for Florida.
And the reason why that's happening is our rail line was very, very old. We grew a lot in population, all right? Where in New York and New Jersey, they built the trains with the best practices. And in Florida, we're using legacy rail lines, okay? And people are getting killed. So if you come down here, right? Let's see, Long Island Railroad, 25 deaths, but their death ratio, 0.28. They are, Brightline is 16.4 times more likely to kill a pedestrian or a driver than Long Island Railroad. New Jersey Transit, they're 22.8 times more likely to have a collision. Now, why? We talked about elevated rail, all right? There's three reasons. There's a high percentage of back-grade crossings. In the case of Brightline trains, all right, 95.31% of all crossings are at grade. We don't have bridges, we don't have tunnels, right? The second thing, there's been no investment in what they call enclosed corridors, so either slat fences or like I-95, right? They've got barriers on I-95, right? So people aren't running across I-95. And oh yeah, by the way, those cars are only doing 70 miles an hour and I can't get across there, right? These are going to be doing 80 to 110. And then the death trap crossings. These are legacies. And I'm going to explain how this was, or how this works. So this is Blue Heron Boulevard and Old Dixie Highway. Let's notice a couple things. The first thing is the tracks, you got to cross them, right? They're at grade. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing, look here. There's no barriers. There's no fencing whatsoever. All right, again, 79 to 110 miles an hour. Imagine stepping out onto Donald Ross Boulevard and a car's doing 100 miles an hour. I mean, we don't really cross that, right? But we do cross it there because you know why? Look at this. You see this little track right here? You know what that is? That's a football field right there. That's a recreation. There's the track, right? There's the track. So imagine you've got your dog and you've got your toddler kid, and boom, they take off. No fence. Are you kidding me? So let's get back to here. Now, the death trap. How many of you have ever had the light turn red and you're parked here and you've got to be to a meeting, or you've got to be to a game, or you've got to pick up your child? Have any of you guys ever been in that situation? And you need to make a decision as to whether or not you're going to stay back here, or you're going to wait for the freight train to go by? Because if you pull up here, and a freight train comes, you don't have to wait 20 minutes. Has anybody ever had to make that decision?
Yes.
Right? Millions of times per day, that has to happen in South Florida. That is a death trap right there. They need to solve that. The way to solve it is engineering the lights properly so they get free egress if there's a train in the area. It's also, you talk about Lantana, Hypoluxo, Lake Worth. Drive up and down Route 1, or excuse me, up Old Dixie, right? It's ingrained in the community. The people cross those tracks. They live in a house to the east side, and their stores to the west side, and they walk across. They've been doing it forever. Now they're doing 79 miles an hour.
But there are no trespassing signs there. If you're gonna ignore those signs, you're risking getting hit by a train. They're there. Those signs are there.
Okay, but valid point. But on I-95, they invested in sound barriers.
Not right away.
How come? Why'd they do it?
Because
Sounding people away.
Because people got hit, and the people that were buying the $500,000 houses said, that's way too noisy. Who's stopping them from doing it in Hypoluxo?
Nobody.
How come? Nobody, right?
They have apartment buildings all over.
They had apartment buildings all over. I drove it on a Sunday morning. Couldn't believe how many people were out. People going to church, walking across those tracks. It's just part of the community. When I was a kid, I had a house in Maine, right? So there was a track. There was a track 15 feet from our house. I mean, literally 15 feet. And we played on those tracks. And those trains only ever went 20 to 25 miles an hour. And we knew we had to stay off those tracks. But we did play. When Mary Lou Retton was popular, we were gymnasts. We jumped off the trestle 100 times a day. It's part of the community. And now, times have changed. So
People need to be educated.
well, so education is certainly one method, right? The other method would be this. How great would it be if Virgin Trains worked with the local municipalities? Virgin Trains has some very, very great advocates in Washington. And they said, hey, listen, we want to have a jobs corps. We want to build our infrastructure. How great would it be if they partnered with local municipalities? We could have the largest economic development and jobs program in South Florida history. If they would just work and say, you know what, how can we do this? We know where the hot zones are. They've got the data from all the deaths, right? We know where the hot zones are. What do? Slat fencing? Here, so to your point, a couple weeks ago, they were bidding for a piece of property in Fort Pierce. $2.8 million, the HD King property, all right? It's on the water in Fort Pierce. You know how many miles they could have fenced in with $2.8 million? 15 miles through Lake Worth, through Hypoluxo, protected those people. But they wanted to buy the property. They wanted to steal the property, by the way. They didn't necessarily want to pay. And as part of their proposal, they wanted control over the marina in Fort Pierce. Would Jupiter give up their marina? Would West Palm give up their marina? Predatory. Now, I talked about this. That track, running track, right next to the railroad track. All right, so.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes, you may.
Okay, you're talking about the blockage on 95, which is very, very high.
Yes.
Now, if you want a fence along US 1 in Lantana, how high would that be?
You know, listen, I'm not an engineer. Christian, how high I'll tell you what, here's what it needs to be. In order to keep me out, it's got to be a slat fence and it's got to be 6 foot tall because I cannot get my big butt over it. All right? In order to keep some other people, maybe 4 feet. All right? But if you want to protect high school kids, it probably has to be 10. It's a slat fence. Or, again, listen, this is on $1.75 billion. Why not prove the model between West Palm and Miami? I'm not saying that it needs to stop, okay? Prove the model between West Palm and Miami. Bring your safety record down to the national average, 0.5 deaths per 100,000 miles traveled. 4.5, 4.7 deaths per 100,000 miles. If I was the CEO, I'd tell them right now, listen, this better stop and it better stop now. Here's what I want. I want you guys to fix this. And the reason why I want you to fix it is this. If we don't stop it, every time somebody gets killed, how long do we have to wait for that train to start up again? We lose on-time performance. How are you measured as an airline or as a train? On-time performance. If they're not reaching the station, what time at the time that they were supposed to? How long are people going to take it? I want it fixed right now. That would be my mentality from it. Does that make sense to you? Right?
When you're saying this to fix it, we're going to put up high fences?
Well, again, there's a strategy. You've got at-grade crossings. You've got fences. You probably need to slow down in some of these areas. You probably need good education, which they are working on education. All right. One of the things that they're doing is arresting more people for trespassing. So.
Can't fix it.
What's that?
That's right. Can't fix it.
Well, all right, so I lose. You can't. So some people just won't learn. But you know what? I had a really good friend. I was 20 years old. I'm going to school at the Naval Academy. All right. So I get a call from John Coleman. John Coleman was an all-American wrestler. He got in trouble. He got arrested. They asked me for money. And this isn't why I'm on this project, by the way. So he asked me for money. I said, John, I'm in college, man. You have whatever I got. I'll be home on Friday. Friday morning, I didn't get home. John stepped in front of the train in New Brunswick, New Jersey. And you know what? He wasn't stupid. All right? He got in trouble. He was a 20-year-old kid. He made a mistake. He got arrested. He needed bail money. Came from a family of 15 kids. All-American wrestler. Straight A student. Best kid you ever met. He was not stupid. And that's what Patrick Goddard says. And you might think they're stupid, okay? And there are stupid people. There are stupid people that make this mistake. Okay? They make that mistake. But let me tell you something. Up in Port St. Lucie, I would take my kids to St. Anastasia School you laughing? I don't think it's funny. Every morning, I take my kids to St. Anastasia School, and I had to cross over one of those, and I had to make a decision. Am I going to park behind it, or am I going to park in front? Because if I park behind it, my kids are going to be late for school, and they're going to get the merit. I had to make that decision. It happens millions of times a day. And I'm telling you that if I was a CEO, I'd fix it. I'd find ways to fix it. And they deny it.
Can I add something to,
yes.
To your side? Some of these people that never played on trains, I did the same thing you do. I'm a little bit older, I'm 75 years old. The old trains, we could hear them coming. They weren't aerodynamic. We had a saying in the Marine Corps, the bullet that kills you, you never hear it.
Yes.
Right? These trains are phenomenal. They're aerodynamic. You don't hear the sound sometimes until it's almost to you. Right?
And the faster they're going.
You know, the thing is, when something's coming straight at you, you don't distinguish the speed as well if it's from the side.
Yeah.
You know, when it goes past, wow, it's like that. So, you know, what you're saying is, you know, there's a lot of sidetracking talking here, but is there any room to stop this thing right now? Is there any, is it gone? Is the train out of the garage?
So $1.75 billion is virtually impossible to stop. The way we want to make it safer, all right? We want them to deploy best practices that are being done in New Jersey, and New York, and Boston, and Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C., and Chicago. And the way that you do that is you got to pass some laws. And you can't leave it up to regulators. You need legislators, and we need influence there. So
Isn't the net of this that engineers have a moral obligation, designers, airplane manufacturers, to produce products that anticipate the foibles of man and reduce the safety concerns. So we have to re-engineer all these crossings and these things, and that's a pittance compared to the overall budget of things. So the net is, it's on the engineers and the legislatures to put that package together and give us safety.
And that's just it. Let's do what everyone else does. And yes, it is a pittance, $1.75 billion. They're going back out for another $3.5 billion in order to go from Las Vegas to California. All right. So yeah, that's the solution.
There's a minimum standard of safety in all things. Boeing violated it recently. Okay?
Yeah.
Airbus has been violating it for years by taking authority from the pilot.
Yes.
But the train engineers have dumbed it down in terms of the safety, and it's a moral obligation. I quote the man who was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize: "You build equipment that anticipates the errors of man."
And that's it. It's social responsibility, right? I mean, let me ask you this. Would you go to a restaurant that was 8 times more likely to kill you of food poisoning than the average one here in Jupiter?
That's the moral equivalent.
Right? I mean, there's ways to fix it. Admit it, figure it out, fix it. It's not that hard. I know we gotta go. So, Brightline will tell you that they're a privately held company and it's not on taxpayer dollars. All right. I will tell you that their bonds are rated junk. They're saving 10% per year times 30 years on $1.75 billion borrowed, which is $5.25 billion in savings and expenses.
Wow.
That's a pretty good subsidy. You guys talked about having to maintain crossings. So anyway, that's really it. We had a lot. It was a good discussion. We had a lot of questions and answers. What's that? Well, so Brightline Finance.
At 100 miles an hour, or we've got Brightline coming through right now, and we've got a 4 times chance likely of getting hit by it.
The liquefied natural gas is the huge disaster, the possibility, okay? The reality is, and this is when they run around saying, hey, listen, it's going to be real estate development, there's going to be all kinds of jobs, and business is going to go up. The reality is that's not true. I spoke to all the business owners on Clematis. I asked them, hey, what has Brightline meant for your business? Negligible. That's the answer, 0.
I know the federal government has an Army Corps of Engineers, and they're always making safety assessments. Does states have that? Do they have something similar? Because obviously.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So the federal government sets the federal government sets the big rule. So the federal speed limit is 70 miles an hour, right? Now we can say, hey, in conditions in the Lake Worth curve, we're going to slow cars down to 55. So yes, there is home rules.
Well, there's obviously no ruling for barriers for safety.
There aren't, and there's no rules with regards to trains that are traveling between 79 and 110, which is why they're there, or 120 to 125. Yes.
The Brightline fatalities fall into 3 groups. They're the alcohol and drug related.
Mm-hmm.
They're the suicides.
Yeah.
And anybody that doesn't fit in those 2 categories is a trespasser. Why is the railroad allowed to kill trespassers? The speed kills.
Yeah. So their point of view.
I can't kill a trespasser.
No, you can't. But their point of view is that they own these tracks. The communities were built around them. All right, and they say that's our property. So too bad. You need to stay off of our property. But let's take that same argument, right? In the state of Florida, right? A lot of us have pools. And you have to have a fence around them. Why do you have to have a fence around them? Because kids die. Wait till the bus gets hit here. Listen, I'm not a tin hat guy. I'm a business guy. I'm telling you that the business doesn't make sense. Wait till that happens. Then you'll see change. Yes?
There's an article in the New Times, Lauderdale,
yes.
last year. Basically said that in 2017, the federal government already approved the shipments of compressed natural gas up and down the East Coast. They're already doing it from Miami to Latin.
Okay. It's going from Hialeah to the Port of Miami. They approved that. But what they haven't approved is it to go north up to Titusville. That's the application that I just showed you. So when it goes north to Titusville, now all of a sudden you're going to have trains going 110 miles an hour and LNG trains.
But that wasn't what was in the article, so that's not correct.
No, that article's correct. It goes from Hialeah.
Going all the way to Jacksonville.
It's not going to Jacksonville right now. No, they are fueling FEC trains with LNG, but they have not approved the shipment of LNG on the tracks at this point in time.
Don, in closing, can you go to that last summary slide? That last slide was very interesting.
It's not about passenger rail. It's about LNG transportation and transit-oriented development. It's not about long-term economic development, it's not about jobs. Their corporate structure and marketing is purposely deceptive and confusing. There will be LNG shipments on the rails. Frightline has financed the track upgrades for the LNG shipments, okay? So Brightline was the one that got the money. Frightline's deadly, Frightline's unsustainable, okay? And I didn't get into the financials, we'll do that another time. It's a big government regulatory issue, it's not legislative, DOT and the Department of Energy, and the taxpayers and government officials are going to pay for this. Yeah, so, anybody who wants to contact me, write down my email address, Mel, I'll give it to you and you can send it out to these guys, all right? Anybody who wants to do research on this, again, I'll send this to you, and all the documents that I referenced are right there. And then you can go to flsafetrains.com and you can sign up for the newsletter. Thank you very much. Yes.
Scary.
At 100 miles an hour, one of those LNG trains.
The whole town will be destroyed.
Probably take out the town of Lake Worth or something like that.
Yeah. Is that where you live, Lake Worth?
Clemens Garden.
Get that second
Okay, guys.
It's not on.
Joe Willie, we sing happy birthday to a very old guy.
Turn the mic on, Mel. Mic is on. Mel, turn the mic
No,
on.
it's not on.
Please,
It's not on.
Joe Willie's birthday. Joe is the pension closer. He's out for the weekend. Joe, can you come up here, please? Joe.
Now it's on.
Joe, could you come up here, please, so we can sing happy birthday and embarrass you? I'll start it off. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Joe. Happy birthday to you. And many more. Happy birthday, Joe. Joe is the chief editor, the owner, the deliverer of the South Florida Weekend. And he does more advertising for us, doesn't charge us, than anybody else. So he's great. He's been a great pal, and it's a wonderful conservative newspaper. And it's for free. Every Thursday, it should be in your area. So thank you. And a happy and healthy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you all for coming. There'll be no meeting next month because it's Labor Day is Monday.
Oh, that's right.
So that's the first Monday in September, so there'll be no meeting. So we'll see you all soon.
In October.
Thank you again.
I hope you feel well.
All
there, you get a new
Someone's crossing the track.
I see
Like I said, right in the, it doesn't say a lot for the.
First time I heard about Brighton.
No, I'm not taking it. I work, I did some of that
Look, listen, if you've been around the country, I'm gonna tell you, you know that the people involved are really
Stupid. The finance that was in there was worth more than $7 million.
They don't look, well, they don't look and listen.
They don't work, they have no work ethic. In other words,
$100 million.
I don't know what's wrong with them.
Well, it wasn't that bad.
But
It was.
you gotta come from someplace else to be working that.
Yeah, the state had a job. The state was paying $250,000.
You're welcome.
So they did something.
Whenever I see them,
But you know, he made an offer. They came to.
I was always able to outperform anybody else.
And then they came back later. And
Now, somebody from New York would come down and
Bush had the best deal
because they were dog eat dog.
But I'll tell you that the state.
I did one of that question with dog eat dog.
That property.
I didn't step on people today.
Yeah, there's so many different ways.
But I could easily outwork
The architect.
most of those hard workers also hard partiers.
They couldn't get
Anyway,
people from Europe.
I see what he's saying. I was disciplined.
When I saw that big flag, you know, they sued them. They sued them for the flag. You know,
You've got to capture people, capture the riches,
and that's the
take them on a journey.
I worked in copies, and you got so many.
And his visuals, he was all over the place. It was sweet.
You know, I'll go on your
So I feel bad for that. For 10 grand, I'll put together a great slideshow. Have a wonderful sir.
Who are you going to call? You call the Marines or Ghostbusters? Oh, I know. I love seeing that plane coming. You know, the last time we had a president was Kennedy. I remember Kennedy when he came. I met Rose Kennedy. I was getting a sandwich at the pharmacy. You know where St. Andrew's
Happy birthday, Joe.
Dale Harrell.
You know, I
really effective presentation here. A lot of passion. And I hope you'll come back and see us.
Yeah, I will.
It's a function. If I need your help, this directly affects our lives.
Okay, all right. So you live back home at?
I live at Okeechobee and right across the street from High Place. Okeechobee and Lakeview. Okeechobee goes one way, Lakeview goes the other way. Okeechobee goes
Read them all.
east, Lakeview goes west. That's your Remember me, Ted.
But West Palm Beach, 30 what you call it. Okay, right there. Sean, his name is Sean Scott. He's the head of West Palm Beach Downtown Business Association.
Are they on board for fighting this?
I walked in and I asked him, I said,
They have to move it, Mel. They want us to move over there per Barbara, she said. Because they're cleaning this. You can continue on the social.
I like the, I don't know where you get your sauce. In any event, so I get back in the car and he yells.
It doesn't have, you know, it's
a whole misdirection.
Well, if you go into a place and the owner is there, small restaurant.
They make it sound as if it's the greatest thing since sliced bread when it comes to jobs and everything else.
And where do I put the
You have to go forward. I've done a lot of
It
presentations.
says, what do I say? I have no time, I got some guts.
Go forward.
I know. The only thing I missed was the financial piece of this. And
I'm glad I got you to put that last slide.
Not you need any help? You need any
Now, I told him he should consider running for office. I told him.
Bill's like, hell no, you see how abusive it was?
I told him he'd be good at
to
it.
yourself. You help him, you're better than I am.
Well, no, did I curse? Because I might have cursed.
No, don't curse.
But I did say bullshit.
Yeah, that's
Because you took off on me. I'm looking for you for moral support, and you ducked
You
inside.
always have my morals.
Oh, but I needed it then. I was nervous.
You're not
You did a
gonna
good
get
job.
an answer for what you need.
He's mad at me.
Thanks for what you did. Remember Ted, West Palm Beach, I'm gonna send you an email tomorrow.
All right, thank you. Oh, boy, oh, boy. The first thing I would say, so you thought there was MT4s, right now, correct?
Well, no, they when I go through that.
Okay.
I put them in the movie making system.
Yeah, so I got you, right? But I want to see your work because I want to do some more
What this or this one is to take the overlays that you and when the intention is wrong, you walk over your point.
Yes.
Then the whole real overlay comes up, so we're not looking at the thing that's and then points are made, and you can overlay on top of that green arrows or whatever, or red arrows or whatever, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah. So I'm gonna send you a PowerPoint presentation. I'm gonna put it up on Google Drive. And believe me, I don't hate rail.
No. He made a lot of money every time there was a rail, because he would work 2 or 3 days overtime back to back.
Yeah.
So that's a good paycheck for us. Everything you said was amazing.
Thank you very much.
I live around that area of Horton, and I see a lot of people dying.
Oh, yeah.
So the points can be made combining your skills and then text overlays, emphasize points or whatever, all kinds of levels of everything if you want. But you want to make like something available on the website, short or long.
Yeah. So what I would do is I would let's take the raw presentation. All right. If you can just pull that into your phone, whatever you use, right? Just export it. Yeah, just export it before and give me the raw, right? And then so just do an export there for MP4 and put it up on the Google Drive. Right? and then you can do your magic, alright? And do the entire thing, and then when I get that in before you adjust it, I can cut that up.
Well, my way of delivering it to you is to put it into a thing called Vimeo. And then you download it from Vimeo and you have the content.
Cool, that's awesome, good.
You have your card.
I got your card, right?
Yeah, just the one.
That's you? Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you very much.